program relating to robotics, and he's also gotten awards for excellence in his field. So thank you everyone for joining us, and join me to welcome our first speaker today, Dr. Srikanth. So Doctor, you have the platform now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oluleke. I'll share my screen. I hope I am loud and clear, right?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Please let me know if my slides are not moving, okay? All right, good evening, good morning, and good time, everybody. I'm Dr. Srikanth from Gayatri Vidya Parishad College of Engineering, and I'm a senior member of IEEE. And today I'm here to speak about microplastic usage and problems in food chain. So this is a serious problem. As such, if we are talking about the food security and challenges for a global family like us, we are over 7 billion. So 1 billion people worldwide are currently undernourished, and over 2 billion suffer lack of essential nutrients. These are like some severe problems that we are having. And the biggest threats that we are having today are something associated with the climate change, population increase, and disruptions in the food chain. My focus of this talk would be on the disruptions in the food chain. As such, if you are looking at this slide, we can just see what typically would be in our food chain. So what is the plastic waste, or if we're talking about the land and water bodies, or beauty care items, or cosmetics, fish and seafood, drinking water, food materials, packaging materials, and how these are entering our food chain is what is the focus of my talk. So typically we have to understand two things here. What is the food supply chain, and what is the supply chain of plastics, and how they are getting correlated. If I'm talking about the farm to fork supply chain of food, so we would have like sustainable food production, processing, distribution, food consumption, food loss, and waste prevention. That would typically form the food chain from the farm to the fork. And if we're looking at the supply chain of plastics, as such, we would have raw material extraction from crude oil, refining and polymer production, extrusion, injection molding, and processing for resins, and additives in manufacturing for enhancing the plastics, using fillers like glass, packaging materials, consumer products that are developed like toys, household goods, and whatnot, all the material that we are using as plastic, and what is the recycling that we do. So these two are now embedded. They are like interlinked, and if we are trying to correlate, or if we are trying to see the problems emerging, we have some serious issues. So who are the actors, and who are the people who have to get some education, or get to know some things about these processes? So if we are talking about the upstreams, somebody from the farmer, collectors, local traders, wholesalers, and downstream, we have to educate the retailers, consumers about what is the effect of these microplastics in the food chain. And if you see the supply process as such, if you are talking about the harvesting, trading, and processing, and selling, and consuming, this process, again, when we are using something like different packaging material and plastics, how this is affecting. And all these people are to know some things about plastics, which will help us reduce the damage that we get because of it. We have to understand that whatever chemicals that enter something like a marine food. Okay, so if we are talking about a fish, and then what are the different kinds of particles that enter? Okay, so typically they are like ethylene, terephthalate, or vinyl chloride, or many other products of how they are entering the food chain. And if you are trying to understand this, there is a tropic transfer of microplastics. So we are talking about one animal eats another, and microplastics move from one animal to another, and that is entering the food chain. Now, when I talk about the plastic life cycle, we have, like, we all know how we are extracting it from the raw material production, and then manufacturing, and we are fabricating, using ending of end cycle, we are using it, we are seeing it in the landfills, energy recovery processes we are trying to develop, and recycling. So this is typical process. Now, the classification of plastics, which are in this particular process can be divided into 5 major categories, like the mesoparticles, micro, nano, and macro, and mega. So the impact of micro and nano is what is of interest for us today, and this typically would appear like this, and the degradation and biodegradation or mechanical degradation by processes and or by UV radiation is something of immense importance. Okay, now where this problem started. Okay, so this problem started around like 100 years back when Hermann Staudinger first introduced the concept of polymers as plastics. So we have to thank Hermann, because this product of plastic is something that is intervened into our life very much. It is multifaceted, durable, extensively used material having numerous applications. But we also have to understand that this has become a widespread problem today, because we are using like 460 million tons per year, and the recorded mean concentration of microplastics in soil sample was seen as 106,000 items per kg in landfills and dumps, parking lots, etc. Okay, when we are doing analysis like studies on earthquakes, reason for earthquakes, and the various problems that are emerging in environment, we might have to look back at our usage pattern of plastics. So approximately 5 to 13 million tons of litter enter the ocean. This is another major problem, and 90% of global total plastics is delivered into sea by 10 rivers, and out of them 3 we identified are in India, so which is another problem if we see it in the Asian context. And if we are looking at a general perspective, if you are talking about material like sodium and chlorine, these are dangerous items. But if we are talking about salt, which is a combination of sodium chloride, it is a safe and tasty material. Now, if you are talking in contrary, in reverse engineering, and if you are trying to talk about bonds which are key to nanotechnology, and if they are broken with chemical reaction, they might lead to nanoelectric field, which might impact processes and create harmful substances, which might be radioactive. This is like based on my electrical engineering experience and my studies of electrical engineering. The effect of nanoelectric fields is something of a emerging area. Okay, and then synthetic polymers, if we are trying to compare whatever are being created because of plastic, if we are trying to compare with something like a natural polymer fiber which looks like a spider web, we might not be able to distinguish. And then the conductivity of these polymers is, from an electrical point, might also cause some problems in the future. Okay, now around 70% of the world population is poor, and then over 1.9 billion people, exceeding a quarter of the global population, are overweight. These are some problems that are emerging because of maybe the usage pattern or the food habits of our and the living style of our people across the globe. Now, if I look at the traditional agricultural supply chain, we would have a farmer and a consumer, and there will be like unregistered dealers, registered dealers, mandis or small markets, procurement systems, and then retailers and all. Okay, and then if I'm trying to move to products like coconut, which is a natural product, you will have similar exporters, producers, desicators and all. But this being a natural product will not have a big problem. But if I look at the plastic supply chain, and if I'm talking about a recycler of plastic, so this is the number of players in this is very high. If we are talking about a home-based industries or product manufacturers or middlemen or brokers or bulk dealers, so the number of people who are dealing with plastics is immensely high when compared to what happens with a natural product or a natural fiber like coconut. And if you're talking about a agricultural supply chain, if we are trying to compare this, and if we are trying to understand it from a sustainable development goal of UN, where we are aiming for zero hunger, climate action, for lower greenhouse gases, life in land to be made with more biodiversity on farmland, we are just not reaching to the scale. This happens because of the numbers we see in plastics and the amount of recycling that is done. This is one scenario where we are seeing the amount of plastic that is unaccounted is remaining at least 8 to 15 million tons, which is not a good number. And then what are the health problems that we are getting? We are getting like gastrointestinal problems, chemical concentration increase, inflammation and immune response are changing, hormonal disruptions are happening, bioaccumulation in tissues are happening, reduction of nutrient values is happening, and then we are seeing leaching chemicals from plastics are causing endocrine disruption, and we are also seeing enzyme activities is reducing. These are all serious problems on health, and United Nations as such has made a lot of studies on this aspect, and it is estimated that modern production process account for 29% of the overall food system emissions, which again, if you are talking about the greenhouse gas emissions in the to meet the demands of the global food demand, we are the expedited processes of food manufacturing is another dimension which is adding to the problem. And then we are trying to look at the vulnerability. Okay, the food security and nutritional status of the most vulnerable population is going to deteriorate further, and then we have to make sure we are having affordability of healthy diets, and our answer lies in how we manage the food supply chain and whoever are the players in this particular thing. And then if we want to end hunger, which is like one of the sustainable development goals of the United Nations, we have to ensure sustainable food production systems. We have to correct the mechanism, trade restrictions and distortions in whatever world agricultural markets are there, because it's a global product. Food being exported and imported, and with different scenarios, it is very difficult to regulate what is happening. And then the Food and Agriculture Organization of UN has reported that agricultural value chains each year use 12.5 million tons of plastic products, while another 37.3 million are used in food packaging. Whatever we are using in food packaging, this is danger, and whatever we are using in value chain, that also is a danger mark. And then Asia was estimated to be the largest user of plastics in agriculture production, and then most of microplastics is seen in this particular product. Okay, and then what is it that we recommend? Okay, so based on UN recommendation and the reports that are in use, we have to refuse, redesign, reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover for the usage of plastic. We have to rethink whenever we are trying to use plastic. We have to refuse, redesign. So this is the report which recommends a voluntary code of conduct which asks every person to think twice on their usage of plastic. And then if you're talking about the environmental program, okay, so it is like how we can modify the product. Okay, so if we are using a microplastic pollution that is caused in soil as fertilizer, so this is again another problem. And if we are talking about biosolids, this is another problem. And we are trying to understand how these are getting mixed with something like a soap, shampoo, or any makeup material, and what is the chemical reaction leading to, because this is a research area that is being investigated. And if we are looking from the perspective of what would be a result of a particular reaction, and what will be the effect on a global scale, we have to make more studies at a global level to reduce the reliance of hydrocarbon-based polymers. These days we are seeing bio-based polymers, okay, is expanding. But again, what is the price of this, and how to accommodate this in the ecosystem of agriculture? That is another important thing, because whatever runoff of surfaces, erosion, and natural vegetation processes, are how are we going to deal with them becomes an important thing. Okay, and here when I talk about Food and Agricultural Organization of UN, they have actually given guidelines on how these microplastics are binding and creating new problems. Okay, and if you are talking about in summary, what we are having in summary, the problems with microplastic, they are present in every corner, and we are easily transferring to the human food chain, and we have in seafoods, plant and animal origin food, drink and food additives, and we have to see it as a potential threat. And it is like, if you are seeing the linkage, this is a huge web of microplastics that we are linked with. And then if you are trying to see the poor waste management across the globe, you can see the brown shades represent how badly we are managing these plastics. And then if you are looking at the UN goal of 14, UN Sustainable Development Goal 14, which says we have to reduce marine pollution, ocean acidification for sustainable use of coastal and ocean resources, again requires us to look at our usage patterns. Okay, and we also have to keep an eye on the emerging new sources of microplastics. So something like if you are using tires, these are again a secondary contribution of microplastics. And then there are again ingestion and entanglement in the marine vertebrates and plastical conceptual model that are there. Okay, so if we have to understand this, the statistics says only 10% or 10% of plastics is being recycled, 94% is being remaining in the environment, and seafood is one of the main ways in which it enters the human, and airborne microplastic is again becoming a new problem. So what are the problems that are being identified? We are unable to distinguish. Smaller size can be misinterpreted to a natural fiber. And then these days after COVID-19, the ecotoxicological hazards that are post COVID-19 are also to be seen after the usage of our masks that are being recycled again. And then if I'm trying to analyze the impact, we have to see that it reduces the groundwater recharge, which is a major problem across the globe, and it will arrest the downward percolation of rainwater, affecting the groundwater recharge, which is a problem. So the mandate that was given by UN on a global agreement was that end plastic pollution toward a internationally legally binding instrument, and they want governments to interact and make sure that people understand about what is the requirement on this particular aspect. And some of the suggestions are to reuse and redesign the development of microplastic, because if you're talking about micro and nanoplastic, they are used as drug carriers. Thanks to the development of nano engineering, we use nanoparticles for drug delivery, but the problems that are arising out of the other materials that are entering the food chain is a major problem. So potential of utilizing microplastic waste found in ocean as a source of liquid fuel may be something we have to look into. So the global call through treaties is something that we have to understand, which would ensure that we have an environment with human health improved, human rights improved, and biodiversity saved. And I would thank IEEE for giving me this opportunity. These are some of my references. I had to go through some 100 research papers and study them in order to understand the problems. From an electrical engineering perspective and a robotic perspective, we are trying to develop mechanisms which would aid to reduce the damage that is caused with these particular plastics. So thank you all. That is what I would have to speak about.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srikanth, for your insightful talk. And I believe we've all learned something here, how we can say no to plastics. But I guess later on, you're going to come and tell us how we can probably buy our soft drinks and avoid plastics and other things. The perfumes we use, the liquid soap we use, how can we ask for them to be packaged? Just wondering, maybe we need to take this campaign to the multinationals and the pharmaceuticals who package all our drugs and the rest of them in plastic materials. But I guess more of this will come during the questions and answers. But mainly we're happy that we could learn from that. And please just hold on. Very soon we'll have the questions and answers after the third speaker. All right. So anyone who has a question for Dr. Srikanth, please reserve it for the question and answer session for the panelists after the third speaker, which would be in about 30 minutes time. So the next speaker we have is Mr. Michael Luger. Mr. Michael Luger. Mr. Michael Luger holds a master's degree in computer science from the University of Innsbruck. And after a decade of successful work as a technical project manager in that field, he shifted his focus toward international development cooperation. Currently, he's involved with the Tanzanian NGO Rural Development Organization and manages the ongoing IEEE Smart Village project, Honey Farming Hub. So right now, we're going to be hearing about honey farming from Mr. Luger. So Mr. Luger, you have the floor now to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And also thank you for inviting me to this session. And today I'm going to give a presentation about our ongoing project with IEEE Smart Village. honey farming hub, which has the goal of establishing a center of excellence in honey production in Eastern Africa at our organization here in Tanzania. So first I would like to give an introduction about our organization and the context in which we are implementing this project. And I'm going to describe the project, our goals, and what we have achieved so far, and where we currently stand with our activities. And as a background, our organization, Rural Development Organization, is an NGO which has been active for more than 20 years in Iringa region in Tanzania, in the field of providing sustainable development solutions to the rural communities in this area. And we have three main programs. One of it is a home-based orphan support program, where we are providing access to basic needs of our beneficiaries. And in this context, also we have a very strong focus on supporting them with access to education. Then we have a water supply project in more than 20 villages in the rural areas. And these programs are complemented by a vocational training center, where we provide access to practically relevant education in several trades in the rural areas. And for this, really, we can engage the youth in our target region. And one of our vocational training trades is agriculture. And in this context, also we're working together with the farmers and farmer unions in this area. And we have seen, even our organization for several years has also practiced beekeeping. And we have recognized also on a global level that there is a very high potential for producing honey in Africa. There's a very large demand for honey globally. Even in a country like Tanzania itself, the production doesn't meet its demand currently. And besides the production of honey, also the pollination which bees are conducting are really crucial for very large amount of crops. And the annual market share of these crops is orders of magnitude higher than even the like honey, as an example. And one of the issues which has occurred in the past, I think, 1 or 2 decades, with the European honeybee, which is prevalent in Europe and the US for honey production, or for pollination and honey production, is that due to climate change, the use of pesticides, insecticides, and they have become less resilient over the time. And another cause is also the industrialization of agriculture, including also the industrial pollination of crops through bees. So there have been phenomena like colony collapse disorder, and it has been becoming increasingly difficult to keep the colonies healthy. And this is not the case in Africa with the African bees, which are producing honey. They are still more resilient than the European honeybee. And of course, there are a lot of farmers which are practicing beekeeping, but it's more as like a supplementary way to earn income. And there are some obstacles which are really posing a barrier towards a country like Tanzania to really produce a large amount of honey, which can also serve international markets. And one of the issues that we have recognized is that the quality of the honey, it is sometimes not up to the standards which would be required when it is exported. For example, the color of the honey of different batches is going to be different. Would be possibly like different amount of water in a batch of honey. Sometimes beekeeper, they are using smokers too much in order to calm down the bees during harvesting, so there might be a scent of smoke in the honey. And due to limited access to high quality equipment and knowledge about methods for like efficient beekeeping, also the quantities they are not that high. And this also is one of the reasons why the access to markets, it's not very well established in Africa. And I can see here from also our experience here in Tanzania. And there is also some other barriers related to poor infrastructure and facilities in this country. And in order to address these obstacles, we've been looking at providing education, access to high quality equipment, as well as access to markets. And we have formed a project together with IEEE Smart Village for setting up like a best practice center for honey production within our organization. So as part of this ongoing project, what was already done is that we conducted a beekeeping training with beekeepers from the area, with an expert, Mr. Daniel Adesina Oduntan. He's a beekeeper with more than 30 years of experience in beekeeping. He's originally from Nigeria and has been living in the US. And he really has a lot of knowledge about like the like scientific and technical points of beekeeping, but also he knows how to apply it in Africa. And based on this knowledge and also our own work, we have been developing a training curriculum. We are in the process of introducing also training about beekeeping at our organization. We have, as part of our project, also the task of developing like financial model for beekeeping, and also the project results will be shared among partners of IEEE Smart Village. And one of the elements of the project, it was the on-site training with the external expert. And basically with the topics you see on this slide, basically the goal is to get like a better understanding about how bees are working, how the specific of honey and other bee products, and how really we can keep our colonies healthy, and how we can get efficient, like how to produce honey in an efficient way. And this is mainly related also to learning about modern honey farming methods, because a lot of farmers in this area, even some companies, they still have limited knowledge about what is possible and how in Europe or America, for example, in Western countries, like honey production is really conducted. And with this type of knowledge, we have done the training, which went hand in hand with the ongoing training curriculum development. And complementary to that, we have also developed like best practices or demonstration beekeeping installations in terms of demonstration apiaries, with like which fulfill the best practices of how to set up a beekeeping site. We have like documented best practices on how to manage the hives, the beehives, to manage the colonies. We have evaluated sites and started to write down or to really formalize some guidelines on how to like manage these beekeeping sites, and also how to treat the bees throughout the year. And another point which I made is that there is a lack of access to equipment, which we've been observing for beekeeping in this country. So we have succeeded in setting up production for some of the most important beekeeping equipment in-house. We have a carpentry and metalworks department where we are producing our own beehives, storage tanks, even a honey extractor. And at the same time, also we have partners in Tanzania who can supply us with other beekeeping equipment, which we are importing from abroad, from European companies in our case. And we have been also looking at like the economics of beekeeping. The value chain is involves many different steps for until you end up with the product of honey or even another bee product. And we are looking to establish like really the processes and the requirements to really cover each of those steps. But we are also providing training and working together with other small holder farmers, which can only cover like a part of the of this value chain steps. And one example for this is that we provide them with beehives, and we help them with harvesting the honey. We help them with like processing, and that is one of the ways how we can work together with them. And we've really sparked like high interest in our area, with which came also became like that because we have been quite successful. We have harvested almost 1,000 liters of honey in the previous year together with our partners. And at the same time also we are working to have like a good relationship with our markets for honey in Tanzania. So far we have our own shops or our partners like hotels and other places like that where we are selling our honey, but also we have wholesale partners who are very interested to purchase the honey from us. And for the future, we have been eyeing also the international market, because we believe there is a very good opportunity also to brand African honey as a premium product. And for this, of course, we really need to look more closely at the requirements for certification for an international market. And as also part of this project and as a synergy to other programs, we have some programs where we are trying to implement and also provide trainings about climate resilient agriculture at our demonstration farms. We are now in the process of also introducing more and more different crops applying organic agriculture practices. Of course, income generation through honey sales also will help us sustain all our programs. And we have a pending project with Smart Village to have a solar electricity business for productive use of electricity applications, where also honey is one of the ways to gain supplementary income, especially in off-grid areas. And we are also in the process of introducing beekeeping as a training course as part of our technical college. And this education is also going to be accredited by our national partners for the training authorities. And as part of this project, actually, with the coming of the next milestone, also we would like also to share our results and see how we can also provide our knowledge to other partner organizations within Smart Village. So thank you for your attention, and looking forward if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was interesting, talking about honey and seeing how to brand African honey to meet international standards. So we're excited to hear that, and we really look forward to learning more during the question and answer session. So right now we'll proceed to the third speaker, who is Joan Kerr. So Ms. Joan Kerr boasts a remarkable career spanning over 45 years as an entrepreneur, community leader, and artist who is dedicated to advancing community economic development and making the world a better place for all. Her multifaceted background includes extensive experience in ideas to interpretation skills, and are far-reaching in project development, training, marketing, and film production. with expertise spanning the nonprofit, private, and entertainment sectors. Joan's involvement with IEEE Smart Village has been since 2015, and IEEE HIC since 2009 underscores a commitment to transformative endeavors. Among her notable achievements, she's been honored with the United Nations WSI's Civil Society Award for Content and Creativity, as well as the Region of Durham Partnership Award, and received nomination from the YWCA Woman of Distinction and the Home and Small Business Association for Businesswomen of the Year. She has a diploma in horticulture and certificate in aromatherapy and community facilitation, and she's a former master gardener. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our next speaker. You see, she's a woman of several parts, and she had to ask me for a reminder of what she's supposed to speak about today, whether she's supposed to speak about entertainment or horticulture or creativity. So I've reminded her that she's speaking about a theme relating to the World Food Day. So, Joan, thank you so much for joining us. You have the floor now.
Great, thank you. Yes, I always have to make sure I clarify because I do so many different things, and I still have 15 minutes, right? So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully I do get it. Share. Really bad at technology. That's one thing I should put down on my. Oh, come on! Don't do that to me. Oh, here we go. My mouse never works when I want it to work. Okay. I want to go to 1. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm here today. Thank you, Oluleke, and everyone for actually thinking of me. I'm the perfect person for World Food Days because I'm really actually a foodie. And what I'm here today is to share with you. This is not something that I do as a living. I'm just a foodie. I love food and I love community. So I love to talk about this. So I am actually part of IEEE. Let me go to the next one. And, here we are. There we go. So as Oluleke says, my name is Joan Kerr. I'm actually the Vice President of the North American Working Group for Smart Village. And I'm also the International Service Chair for the Rotary Smart Village Silicon Valley E-Club. He mentioned the awards. I just wanted to quickly talk about some certifications that I got because as a community person, I thought I better get some certifications because when you're talking, it's best that you know what you're talking about other than advocating. So I took the badges for from the UN. Most of these are from the UN. For reducing emissions and deforestation because I love trees and how to use land uses in developing world. And I'm also certified as a foods champion, which is a campaign by the UN as well. I also founded an organization called the Foundation for Building Sustainable Communities. And I had been involved with the not-for-profit world and saw that every single time people couldn't do something, they blamed it on policy or on lack of money. But my feeling, I'm also an entrepreneur, is that you can always find something inside on a way to do things. So I started the foundation to teach people and engage people on obviously environmental actions because my heart's close to that. And then to go out to them to teach them easy ways of becoming sustainable. And so we hosted about 38 events over from 2007 to 2019. We stopped that in 2019 because of COVID mostly, but we had reached what we wanted to achieve. And but in 2009, I read a story about 2009. We started our food program, first of all. And again, I want to share some ideas about that later, but that's a foundation. But first of all, I want to say that today or yesterday was actually International Food Day. I'm sitting in front of my window, which is, my mouth is, there we go. So today is World Food Day. It's typically celebrated on the 16th of October. And this year, the World Food Day's theme is water. So water is life, water is food. So I think it's very important that we understand the importance of water when we're doing food production. And so that's one of our campaigns, is to obviously food production. And we're at the end of this, the food supply chain, and it's about production and eating. And our target market is always the homeowner or the public. So let's go to the next one. So climate change actually does have an effect on food production. It's global, because obviously the climate doesn't have borders and rules and regulation. It does what it wants, but it does affect everyone. And so food production, a lot of people don't realize where their food comes from. They don't understand that what they do in their own country also affects other countries. And so it's definitely an issue. And I'm going over these because I'm trying to get to the project that we had. But climate change is typically about the changes in weather. So we know that climate is always changing, obviously. But I believe, I read somewhere anywhere that we've been keeping data since 150 years ago. And so that's what decisions are made on how they track the differences in over the years. I can tell you for myself, and I'll highlight it later, having a home garden and then the farm was a huge difference, and how climate actually affected some of the major decisions we had to make when producing food. So the climate changes is not just about the weather, the temperature, but it's the droughts, the rain, the wind, and all that affects planting. So this is a situation. We've got food and agriculture, and the UN says that everyone has the right to food, and it's a legally binding right. But on the other hand, if you don't produce food in a sustainable way, it actually contributes to the problem of climate change and greenhouse gases. So that's the situation that we try to address at FBSC, is that you do things in as much in a sustainable way as possible. And let me see here. So when we talk about, I'm sorry, I keep moving because I face my window, and the sun is coming through. So forgive me if I keep moving. It's not because I'm uncomfortable. So it's up to all of us to do something and to care for our planet. And mitigation is very important to understand. And I'm just going to do it from a community level. Obviously, there's lots of scientists and researchers on this, but mitigation is essentially reducing the use of heat trapping greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, because then it then have an effect on what happens after that. So our duty is to then try to keep the make sustainable decisions so that we stabilize the greenhouse gases so the plants can grow. Because when it leaves, it's sort of a dance, then plants actually get affected. And I've experienced it firsthand. I tend to say that, yes, research is great and no problem with great, but a lot of times I share things is because I've actually gone through them. And so this is kind of how it works. This is just a quick graph from the UN. That climate change, people don't understand. You say to a regular person, we have climate change, and they're like, okay, but they need to understand how it affects them. What can they do? And that's what we found out when we were doing a lot of our events, is that people say, it's great that you're telling us what to do, because everybody's telling us that there's a problem. But the people that are going to be affected the most are the people who are growing. The rise in water, the temperature. There is an old saying I know from my own experience in my great grandmother, who was from India and had a lot of knowledge about being a grandmother and growing. And she used to have such vast knowledge, but she wouldn't know how to address climate change now. It's a specific, she knew the plants, she knew how they grew, she knew when to plant them, but a lot of that has changed because we have to do a lot of adaptation to the changing weather. So in all of that, I now want to go to my project because I can talk about that so freely. So in 2007, I read 2008, I read a story that our local food bank had empty shelves. And so I contacted them and asked them, why do you have empty shelves? Well, the food bank collected canned foods and packaged foods. And I said, well, what about fresh vegetables? Oh, no, we don't have that. I thought, oh, it'd be a great thing to do. And it was just off the cuff, not even really thinking about the planning or the planting or where I was going to do it or anything like that. And so I got a number of volunteers, and we ended up getting a piece of land. That's a story in itself. So really the journey began when I read the story, called the volunteers, and then created a garden at a location that was given to us at the time. And we thought, oh, we'll grow food. And we found, oh gosh, you have to have a model, you have to, there is so much to learn on an open land. Anyway, through all of that, we tried different models of what should be done, and we came up with the Victory Garden, and we're environmentalists, so we came up with the climate smart approach, which is about, and I'll talk about what it is in a sec, but what we were given was 10 acres of land, open field that had 6 to 8 foot high weeds. So imagine 10 acres with a bigger piece of land, no water, no electricity, and no buildings, just this vast open space. So that the donor thought they were doing, we had asked for it, and I had bugged them so much that they decided to give it to me. And I guess I was supposed to really walk away because all my volunteers said, come on, Joan, really? And then I looked at it, and I'm one of those people that when idea in my head, there's a way to do it. And so I thought, geez, this is a really great opportunity to do something creative. And so I thought, I looked at it, and then a memory came back to me when I was growing up that we had a sustainable farm. I grew up on a sustainable farm with my family. And I remember, this vast piece of land, and we would have all kinds of events, and we had trees. If you were hungry, you could go pick a mango or a banana or an orange, or, you wanted to cook, and, the food was there, and we also sold to the public, and we had goats and chicken. And I remember just loving that. And somehow that came back to me because, living in Canada, it's very different. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to do that. I'm going to do that with this land. And of course, I said to everybody, I said, oh, look at this. We can do something so wonderful with this. This is like, forget the weeds. We can get rid of the weeds. We're going to build community, and we're going to donate food, and we're going to create community around food. And so that's what we did. So over the period of time, we gave away about 66,000 pounds of food to the food bank, as well as any volunteer or any events. The food was available to cook. And we only have 15 minutes, so I'm not going to share some of the absolutely amazing stories that we had, but people were just astounded on that you could create something with so little. So of course, we had to address the water and the electricity, and I'll come to that in a second. But one of the things that we didn't have was money other than my own pocket. So we thought of a way, how could you actually make money without asking for funding that dictate rules and regulations? And some of you may know I'm an advocate for a free spirit. So I don't like rules and regulations at best of times, and certainly not when it comes to the community. So I thought, well, we'll do what the English always did, was we'll rent out allotment gardens. And so that's what we did. We rented out allotment gardens and we asked for donations for things. And that's how we started on 10 acres. And that worked for a while. So we started out with clearing out the weeds. We rented 57 spaces, 10 by 50 for $65 for the whole season. And we created 3 victory garden plots. And a victory garden is not just a garden. The whole intent is that you teach people how to grow food for the nutrient value that they need on a daily basis. So we took that model and we added the climate smart approach. So all of the environmental approaches to it. So, you know, we didn't have any water. So how do you conserve water? How do you adapt? And how do you grow intensively? And of course, we're environmentalists, so we're not going to use any fertilizers or anything like that. So we just kept doing that. And what we found was that the weather really played a big part. And like I said, I had a phenomenal home garden, still do, where people used to come and go, oh my God, I love your garden. And they didn't realize that I was actually growing food and flowers. And I used to say I grow for beauty and eating, because those are 2 things that I love. But putting it on a 10-acre property was a hugely different approach. One, it's open space, and the wind alone was, you would just slush across the open field. So, and then the first couple of years we had too much rain, and then it would be dry for like 3 weeks, and it was, you think, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? So we did so this is the land, very quickly, and there I am. And I did the manual work. Yes, I didn't just ask volunteers to do it. People were always like, you do actually do the work? And I said, yes, I got my fingers dirty. I dug like everybody else. We're a team. I like to build teams. And so after the first couple of years, we had to look at what we had, and we had to make some decisions. And one was to obviously the Victory Garden was what we wanted to promote. We wanted to promote climate smart agriculture, which is adapting to the climate, and we had to address the water and the electricity and building issues. So that's what we did. So this is the open space, and I hope I'm not going to go over time because I'm trying not to. So one of the things that we did was to build a greenhouse, and the greenhouse was actually funded by IEEE Power and Energy Society for the material, which we were very happy to receive. And the student branch at our local university, so it's like from the garden, it was about maybe 7 minutes. They participated in the design, and we held a brainstorming weekend, and that was so much fun. It was even the students said it was 3 days. They had to hear the concept that I had of what I wanted to achieve, design it, and then talk about it as a team, and then design it. And so we got a number of people to participate. In the lower left-hand corner is someone named Butch Chadwell. He came down and he was the mentor, sort of the lead engineer to help the students. And so there's the open space that we were trying to do. There's the solar panels. that he designed to build. And from that solar panel, and let me see if I have another picture that I can show you where the water was. It was about 150 feet. So they had to actually build it so that when we collected water, or we had water donated as well, because it was way too much to collect at first, and how to pump it. So just digging the trench to where the water was also manual work, and they actually did a really good job. So we had solar panels, and we used Raspberry Pi. As don't ask me all these questions about technology, I just told them what I wanted, and this is what they told me. So this is just a synopsis. So it had, you know, the fans, the pumps, the solar panels to generate the electricity. And so we were able to actually grow quite a bit of food. And later I'll just show you quick pictures of what ended up happening. But one of the things that it did do was allowed us to have events at night, because we now had lights. So before, we had to leave the location because at dusk got really dark, and the location from where I live, like near the city center, and it was really honestly 10 kilometers, which I don't know how many miles that is. So not very far, and it was black by 9 o'clock. Like, I mean, you cannot see. So one of the things it allowed us to do was to have events so that we could have them in the evenings as well. And so our events were really designed to hear what people wanted to learn, because the gardens were set up as demonstration. The 3+ that we had were demonstration gardens, but people could go in when we had events. They could go and pick food, and we'd have a barbecue. They could barbecue the food, and you know, it was like literally 5 minutes fresh, and they loved that. So the events were very substantial in terms of teaching people, and because we went back to what when the foundation was created, it was about engaging and educating in a fun way. And so we wanted to do that, because when people ask questions, you know, like, oh, geez, I never knew you, I never saw an eggplant on a growing. I never really, you know, I see an eggplant in the grocery store, or geez, mixing the flowers, delphiniums, with eggplants because they're purple, and gives it that look and that beauty. It made people wanted to do it. So we so our solutions included, obviously, for a climate smart victory garden, you have to have healthy soil. It's also carbon sequestration, and if you don't have healthy soil, you do not have healthy plants. So that was a major focus that we had. And so just some of the technology, like I said, that we ended up using was from the greenhouse solar project. We were able to have the sensors to tell us when there was temperatures changes, when there was water that was needed. And so we used that. But we also ended up having chickens on the farm, so we would use move them around. We built a rolling cage so that they could go to different areas, and that helped us maintain the land and stuff like that, which was kind of fun. And then we would use their waste and put it in a pot and let the sun dry it out and use it as compost. So out of all of that, because there were so many requests for formal education, not just the demonstration side of it, we created, and it will be launched in 2024, we created an institute to look at just our model, how to grow food, sustainable lifestyle, climate smart agriculture, biodiversity, because there's a real connection between the decisions you made about farming and nature-based solutions. And so that will be launched next year. And a big part of it is how could you make money from having a victory garden. And I can tell you, you can make lots of money for yourself, not billions or millions. You don't need to make that. You just need to make some money. And so here are some pictures of, I just want to share those pictures with you. So in the middle is a group that actually designed the greenhouse, and there's a greenhouse there. And we planted trees, and there's inside the greenhouse, we started with microgreens and then built from that. And that's an early picture, but later at the side, we built stands and containers for herbs and other flowers, so that we could plant in the garden. And more pictures of our people, the different volunteers, a lot of youth leadership. We did 2 leadership programs with youth, and they really loved it. They really were inspired to learn, because again, it was fun. And there's some examples of what we grew. Now, remember the picture that I showed you at the very end, it was quite bare. So we had amazing food. So I just want to close by saying that, you know, this is a critical issue that we're dealing with. You don't have to spend millions of dollars for equipment. You may need to, but if you're a small farm or homeowner, there are other ways that you can mitigate and use technology to offset some of those greenhouse gases that are escaping. Whatever it is you do, just do something for making the world better and making growing food in a sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joan. Thank you for that very interesting presentation and for taking us through your journey. I don't think I've ever heard this story before, so I was, I was excited.
You know, I'm a storyteller. You know, I'm a storyteller.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. Taking us through the entire journey of the Victory Garden. It was also inspiring that we should be people of action and not just talkers. So thank you to our audience again for being there with us all the while. Now we want to answer some questions. So we want our panelists, because they've had the chance to speak for a while before we listen to the keynote speaker. Do you have 1 or 2 questions for the panelists? We might want to take that. Let's see. So we want to take questions and answers now. I think 1 question came up for the first speaker. Okay, it's been answered.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone asked, okay, I think I said that you've answered. Someone said, could you talk more about seafoods and issues with health? And Dr. Srikanth has already answered, saying that, okay, you want to say something about that? But I think I see that you've typed an answer already.
Yeah, I've typed it. Maybe if Ms. Meena requires any clarification, I can just give some references where she can go through more details to understand the effect. As such, the problems are emerging. So these are some existing quoted problems that we find in literature because of the issues of microplastics in the food chain that enter seafood. So for any further information, maybe I can share any reference if required.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, there's a question from Casey. Casey, I think this is for Joan. Casey says, why do tomatoes and basil grow well together?
Yes. So I did a project. Casey, you're bad. I hope it's Casey Kerr. Anyway, I did a project in Tanzania, and one of the issues that came up was for Victory Garden, and it was a timeline, so it was 2 years, and the project leader decided to plant tomatoes because I told him that he couldn't compete with an existing market. He had to come up with a product that didn't compete. And so he chose tomatoes because you could process tomatoes. But one of the things that happened, the disadvantages, was that it attracted different types of insects. And so he phones me and oh my gosh, Joan, you know, the insects are attacking the tomatoes. And I said, oh, that's easy to solve. He goes, it is? I said, yeah, we'll just plant basil around the corners and in the middle, and it will take care of a lot of the insects. And so they did, and it solved some of the problems, not all of it, but he was amazed about this companion planting and the difference that it made in rather than using fertilizers or killers. So that's why, Casey, I tell you, thank you.
Wow, that's really insightful, and I think lots of people would be interested in this, this organic kind of farming, and it would be nice for you to. It's even nice that you've gone as far as trying to have trainings on this. So
yeah,
we need
one
to
other
pass
thing.
This. Yeah.
Yeah, just
I'm
one other
listening.
thing that people, I always try to do these heavy things, and I try to think of the simplest thing that everybody can do. And one of the things in an open field is that a lot of animals will come to your garden. Like in our case, that's what happened. And so everyone says, oh, you got to put up these fences and you've got to do this, and which were expensive. And so what I did was I went out and asked the public. I said, do you have any old hoses, garden hoses that you're going to throw away? And they said, yeah. And so they delivered them, and we cut them up and tied them so they looked like they were snakes around the garden. So a lot of the rabbits and other pests didn't come. And they're like, oh my gosh. No cost.
Wow. Wow, awesome. That's really interesting. Wow. Okay, so because of we've run a bit out of time, I'm going to ask that Joan, would you please answer by text some of the remaining questions here?
Okay.
You could just type some answers there, because we might want to. I think we want Dr. Bourgeois to take his part right now.
Yeah.
Then afterward, we can have certificate presentations. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce our keynote speaker, and we're really honored to have him with us today. So I'm going to share my screen again to read his profile. Yes, just a moment. So my screen will back right now. Good. So Tom Bourgeois, I hope I got the pronunciation right this time. He's the Director, Policy Research at the Paceland Use Law Center for Sustainability, and also the Director of New York, New Jersey Combined Heat and Power Technical Assistance Partnership. He serves as the Director of this partnership and was co-director of this Northeast CHP TAP up to 2017. Tom has authored and co-authored dozens of reports on energy efficiency, renewable energy systems, combined heat and power, microgrids, and analysis of benefits and barriers to distributed energy systems of all forms. He's focused on optimizing incentive systems, creating regulatory frameworks to accelerate investment in clean energy technology systems and districts. For more than 2 decades, he has collaborated with large energy users across numerous forums, and his recent work includes traditional and hybrid microgrids, community district heat pump systems, and thermal networks, and controlled environment agriculture. And that's the exact reason why he's here today. He's going to be speaking about controlled environment agriculture. So with I'd like us to welcome our keynote speaker, Tom Bourgeois. So you've got the platform now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And am I up? There we go. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, the advantage of going last is I get to steal some of the best ideas from Joan and Dr. Srikanth and Michael. Great presentations all. And as I was listening, I was thinking about how nicely this all synthesizes. I really appreciate the chance to speak to you all here today. I'm going to talk about recent work that we've been doing on controlled environment agriculture. And I guess rather than using that long term over and over, from now on, I'll say CEA. We see it as a great opportunity to conjoin two really big issues, which our previous speakers have talked about, the growing issues with food resiliency. And I'm also going to add, I think, perhaps my contribution here, because it wasn't touched on quite as much, as I'm going to talk about conjoining the food resiliency matters that the others were talking about with energy and grid power resiliency matters, which are of also increasing importance. So I'd like to introduce this idea. We think it has merit. I'd like to share it with smart people like you to get it discussed. We've been trying to bring this to people throughout our region. We've met with utilities and grid operators in New York and in Ontario. We also are trying to engage key stakeholders and involve parties. Joan, I think, spoke quite well to the importance of, and Michael too as well, about bringing in community organizations, education, and local parties. Going to talk a little bit about the skills required to do this work, and also how do you get this done, implementation and opportunities to affect change. So kind of setting up this a little bit in terms of the food supply issue. The world's going to need a lot more food. The estimates are of nearly a 50% increase in food production to meet expected population levels by 2050, 60% or more. And then you couple that, and Joan was speaking a little bit about this, the potential fragility of conventional farming. We've seen issues with world food supply was exposed by COVID-19 and also the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We also know, as has been mentioned several times over earlier today, about the current agricultural practices being water intensive, chemical inputs affecting ecosystems, and also agriculture production and the whole chain of agriculture, food and food processing is a very important factor in greenhouse gas emissions. So sustainable solutions here are really of critical importance. And so I'm trying to bring in a second problem. If you have two problems, maybe you can put them together and find more efficient solutions rather than trying to think about them in isolation, which is typically the case, what we might call stovepiping. So we also simultaneously have an important need for massive investment in new generation. Many US states and throughout the world, states and countries and regions have set ambitious decarbonization goals. I'm going to speak a lot about New York because I work primarily in New York in the Northeastern United States. So I'm going to use New York as our kind of, I'll call it an exemplar or our case study. We've passed a sweeping climate action bill that requires a 70% renewable grid by 2030, 100% renewable grid by 2040. We are moving towards electrification of everything, electrification of heating, electrification of transport. That's going to put great strains on the existing grid. And while it has a lot of great merits in terms of the grid's capability to absorb this and all the generation resources that are going to be needed to meet this, it's quite extraordinary. So a potential solution that we've been examining for some 2 years now, it's almost 2 years to the day that we began taking a very close look at this, is the idea of, again, I'm going to use a term once in its full, the full term, combined heat and power, and then I'll abbreviate that CHP, and controlled environmental agriculture, CEA. We see this as a way of conjoining food and energy security for developing resilient and sustainable communities. So with the bringing these two things together, you can get locally grown food. The CHP is, I'll explain a lot more later, but that's generating power at your site. And in this case, we're talking about either a high-tech greenhouse or a vertical farm. Although we focus most of our attention on the greenhouse aspects, vertical farms are a great opportunity, but we see that as a little bit less far along for an immediate solution. You can store thermal energy there. When you generate electricity, I know I'm talking to an audience of engineers. I don't have to tell you this, but with electricity generation, you have a great amount of waste heat. In fact, most of our power plants operate at about 30% total system efficiencies. So for every 100 units of energy that comes in, about 2/3 of that is waste heat and 1/3 is useful energy. So you can recover waste heat, store the heat recovery. You can also take the CO2 that comes off of the engines and use it to feed the plants within the greenhouse. And then both Michael and Joan were speaking about educational programs and education opportunities. We see this as being an important aspect as well. So our hypothesis here is that appropriately designed and controlled and operated CEA systems can simultaneously address two big problems: society's needs for greater food output with markedly lower environmental footprint. And I'll show you very shortly what I mean by that: the water use, the land use, all of those footprint impacts are greatly reduced with the high-tech greenhouse. There's a societal need to address water, energy, and environment. And then there's also this pressing imperative of developing dispatchable, emissions-free resources. I'm going to use another acronym here. DEFR, New York has called this a distributed and dispatchable dispatchable emissions-free resource. And that's a requirement for safe and reliable functioning of a 100% renewable grid. I'm sure you engineers will get that. With intermittent renewable energy, you need fast ramping, online, ready to go resources there to pick up the grid when there's a unexpected decline in solar insolation, when there's an unexpected decline in wind, or when there's inrushes of either energy or power from wind or solar. You need to have a resource that can utilize excess power. So I'm now to get to the big slides here. We like to say that it can be done because it has been done. This isn't stuff that we're just making up here. The high-tech, this is actual data. This is from the trade association, Dutch Greenhouse Delta. We've interviewed them, spoken to them a lot, have borrowed heavily from their work. This is 2021 data. And if you look to the far right, this is greenhouse and artificial lighting. And you'll see the red. The red is the amount of tomatoes, kilograms per hectare, that can be grown per year. And then look to the far left, and that little red bar, that's open field tomato growing, open field. So you can get more than 5 times the amount of tomatoes, 750,000 kg to 150,000 kg per hectare. Now the blue, again, look to the far right, that little blue here, this is water use in the greenhouse. And this large blue, this is the water use in open field. You're using 80% less water, 78% less water to deliver more than 5 times the amount of output. So this is a phenomenal story in terms of reducing the land use footprint, reducing the productivity per acre or hectare, while minimizing fertilizer use, water use, and so on. Now, when I saw this, I was on a call of a webinar that I brought together our New York State, Empire State Development Corporation, and some other people to talk with the Dutch Greenhouse Association. Again, this is measured data, and I'd like you to please focus on the top 2 lines. Line number 1, which is the United States, and line number 2, which is the Netherlands. This is 2 variables graphed on a single line. And from the center to my left, the blue, this is the land surface area in farming, in agriculture. And then from the center to the right, the red, that's the financial value of food exports. Now, this is raw food. This is not, this is not like Doritos or Cheerios or packaged foods. This is raw vegetables. This is tomatoes, leafy greens. This is peppers, green peppers and cucumbers. This is raw food. Line number 1 is the United States. So if you look from the center to the left, the blue, there's a huge amount of land in agriculture. And if you look from the center to the right, the red, there's a very large volume. This is the volume of food exports in dollars. That little blue, the number 2 here, this is the Netherlands. The Netherlands, that little blue line is the land and agriculture. It's 1 divided by 22. It's 1/22 of the land in agriculture in the United States. And if you look at the red, the second largest exporter of food in the world, raw food, is the Netherlands. Now, this is a country of 17.5 million people. This is a country, 2 million less people than the state of New York. And by dollar volume, they're the second largest raw food exporter in the world. I found that to be an absolutely astounding story, and one that I said, I got to research this. This just blows me away. So now I'm going to try to join together these two concepts. Why does on-site power, which provides resiliency and local energy and local grid resiliency, why does that work well with CEA? CEA has flexible loads. The greatest source of energy in controlled environment agriculture is the lighting. Now, in a greenhouse, the lighting can be ramped up and down, and you can use different lighting strategies. There's a lot of research going on around the world on this topic, using alternating red and blue lights. That's been found to increase, to reduce the energy usage by some 20% while reducing the increasing the output. You can change, this is all done, by the way, with advanced controls, sensors, communication algorithms. This is done in a manner where you utilize a lot of information and data, sensoring, monitoring, optimization algorithms. But, this is how these things are designed. And there's no reason why you can't do this anywhere. This is well-known technology. But again, with the ventilation, the horizontal and vertical fans can be matched to the need for power. You can turn them off. You can turn them off for periods of time. I mentioned thermal energy. You can store in a thermal battery. That's simply just a hot water storage area that will decouple the need for thermal generation and power utilization. The most important being, and I want to focus on this, I provided several references below. Again, I'm just not making stuff up, but this one here, Dr. Van Israel, they examine, and the name of the paper, I think, tells the entire story. The title of the paper is "Only Extreme Fluctuations in Light Levels Affect Plant Growth." Now, they looked at, in this case, it was lettuce. So you can literally shut off the lights for 6, 8, 10 hours, and you do not reduce the productivity. The plant needs a certain amount of light but it's over. It's not instantaneous. It's over, and it's like an integral. You need a certain amount of light, but you need it over 24 to 30 hours. You don't have to get it at 3 in the afternoon. If your grid is stressed for power in the middle of the day on a very, very hot day, you can turn that off. So we see this as being a great opportunity to conjoin a need for on-site power with a process which is quite flexible. It has a great deal of flexibility where you can stop the electricity usage or change the electricity usage without harming the output. Now, generally, on-site energy systems, at least today in the Netherlands and elsewhere, are operated with natural gas, but we're all looking at solutions, government, academia, the CEA industry, we're all looking at solutions to move to renewable natural gas, to biogas-powered CEA and other forms of CEA. We've been looking at New York as a laboratory to examine the changes in regulation that are necessary, frameworks and feedstock supplies. And just as an aside, that footnote down on the bottom, I partnered with UC Davis School of Agriculture, Cornell University's horticulture program, Texas A&M, on a USDA grant for climate smart solutions for sustainable food production in indoor farming. One of my mentors, the president of the IDEA that runs some of the best conferences I have ever gone to over 20 years, he says, show, don't tell. Show more, talk less. So from here, I'm going to do a lot of showing and less telling. I'm going to show you that this stuff really works. So here we have the integration of CHP with controlled environment agriculture. This is in the Netherlands. It produces heat and electricity, renewable heat from wood waste, from prunings, from yard wastes. Very high efficiency. The CO2 from the flue gas is captured. It's used in the greenhouse for crop growth. Excess heat and electricity can be supplied both as thermal and electric energy via a microgrid. This combines both the 15 megawatt thermal output with 3.4 megawatts of electric power. This is a case foothill greenhouse. This is in Ontario. This has both a solar array, 20 kW, as well as a combined heat and power system. The combined heat and power system is utilizing wood waste. Again, the CO2 is taken off the engines and used and recycled into the greenhouse to feed the plants. This 15-acre farm can produce 8 times more cucumbers per unit of acreage than open farming can do. And again, as an aside, this greenhouse, by the way, just bid in to serve as a grid asset. This is the ultimate goal we're trying to get to, but I'll talk a little bit later. Ontario has a need for power right now. They need 4 gigawatts. There's a power shortage looming between 25 and 27, and they're calling for resources. On February 6th, the town council unanimously voted to approve this as a site where they would add more power to supply the grid. This can be done at small or large scale. This is a case of a bioenergy farm using food waste, biogas as fuel, greenhouse nutrients are recycled, CHP is utilized. This is in Washington State, because some of the other things I was showing you were a little bit larger scale. Again, I'd like to show that this can be done because it has been done. In our research, we've tried to gather best practices from around the world. Here, I'm going to attack each one of these title. I say hybrid and efficiency and decarbonization. So number 1, hybrid. This is a hybrid geothermal heat pump system utilizing geothermal energy along with a 9 megawatt CHP using natural gas, 3 high efficiency engines with CO2 recovery. This qualifies in England for the renewable heat incentive. The middle one is a high efficiency. Now this does use gas, but it does so in an extraordinarily efficient manner, over 90% total system efficiency. The heat is produced for heating the greenhouse. It's also put into a district system. Exhaust gases are clean and used for CO2 to feed the plants. And this also works as a grid resource. The heat buffer allows this company in West Flanders, Veragro, to influence the energy market and support the grid. This provides greater fuel savings and a higher level of efficiency for the company, but it also provides a resiliency resource for the local grid operator. And then finally, a decarbonization example here, an anaerobic digester in Leamington, Ontario. This is the first privately owned commercial scale anaerobic digester. It's adjacent to a very large commercial organic greenhouse. It exports electricity into the grid. Again, this is my theme, joining together on-site power with growing local food, local energy. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. This also serves as a permitted capacity. It takes 110,000 tons per year of source separated organics. So this is waste management, this is food management, this is power management, and all in one package. Another concept I'd like people to think about, and this can be done whether you're, no matter where you are in the world, but think about districts, because district systems and creating districts or microgrids, I mentioned that at the start, allows you to share resources to share between different processes. I'm going to talk about data centers and excess heat, but that's only accomplished by having the infrastructure of a thermal energy and a electrical energy distribution system. So here's a couple of examples of this. Q-scale data centers. These are data centers in Quebec that are going to be constructed adjacent to food producing facilities. The middle one, this is a greenhouse next to a paper mill, Resolute paper mill near the Tundra greenhouse. They've entered into a district partnership. The greenhouse will take the heat and the power. Excess heat will be used within this loop. And then they also have additional electricity that they can provide and heat that they can provide for upcoming industrial and commercial tenants. So once again, they've created a district to share power, to share heat, thermal energy in a very optimal way. Finally, Sweden, an agreement between a greenhouse company and Agterra, which is owns several data centers. They're doing cucumber cultivation with a pilot plant in Boden, Sweden. They expect to have 10 afterwards. The potential to recover residual heat from the data center is huge, and they're utilizing it to site next to greenhouses to allow that to be utilized for food production. So this is a great circular economy story, sharing resources. Several homes, businesses, greenhouses, and farms can be put together into communal districts. The waste from one, again, I've given several examples. I've given examples of pruning and farm waste and wood waste, in paper mill waste, in data center heat waste. The waste from one process can be co-located next to somebody else that can utilize that waste in a circular manner. So I want to talk a little bit about the urgency. Decarbonization, we all support this idea. We're looking to decarbonize, but with that comes a huge increase. I'm going to use New York State, but this goes without saying for anybody who is talking about moving to a decarbonized grid or a totally renewable grid. We have to triple the amount of triple our current amount of power to meet our 2040 goal. Roughly 7 years from now, we need to have 20 gigawatts of additional renewable generation. And to put that into context, less than 13 gigawatts have been developed. In 7 years, we need 20 gigawatts. In the last 23 years, we've developed less than 13. We have thinning margins. I mentioned Ontario. They already have a power shortage of 4 gigawatts. And then I talked about this need to make the grid of the future work, to make this totally renewable grid work. You need these resources, what we call DFRs. They have to be operating, and we need them at huge scale. In the published report, the New York Climate Action Plan, which was just published in December of 2022, they identified a variety of studies that said between 15 gigawatts to 42 gigawatts were needed of these resources. Now, this is just to shore up when the intermittent grid needs to be backed up by rapidly ramping immediate power. You're going to need to have these resources. So we're thinking that bottom bullet, CEA's flexible load characteristics can serve this purpose and get paid for it, and create a great social benefit and resiliency benefit by supporting the grid, reducing grid load, or by even taking excess power when there's a lot of excess power to be had. I'm going to move towards the conclusion here. Again, I like to say it can be done because it has been done. We've talked a lot. IESO is the independent electric systems operator. They run the grid in Ontario. They currently have a program open to a variety of dispatchable resources. They need 4 gigawatts, 4,000 megawatts of power between 2025 and 2027. And greenhouses in Ontario stand poised to be a resource here. I've given you a couple of examples where they can produce power at 90% or greater efficiency, utilizing the waste heat, and then also put the power into the grid when needed. I also mentioned this Foothill greenhouse. That's the one I showed you that delivers 8 times more cucumbers per acre. Their local town board in Kings Township, back in February of this year, unanimously approved them providing a new contract to provide 1.4 megawatts of cogen into the system. So the key stakeholders in this process, you've got to address energy regulators and policymakers, grid operators and utilities. It's really important, we think, to get involved community organizations. Both Michael and Joan talked very eloquently about bringing in community associations, teaching, setting up local entrepreneurships and community organizations that can participate in this, whether it's indoor vertical farms or greenhouses, whatever it may be. We've been talking to engineers. We've been talking to the greenhouse industry here in New York. The trade association is GLAZE, the Greenhouse Lighting and Systems Engineering Consortium. And of course, you need to have on-site power companies and the RNG, renewable gas industry involved, because we're not looking to expand natural gas use. We feel that while we're still using natural gas, this is a damn smart way to use it, but we're not looking to expand natural gas use. So for expansion, we're looking at bio-based, whether that be through food waste, farm waste. I mentioned prunings and other forms of vegetable wastes to help support this bio-based greenhouse. We see this as an exceptional opportunity for multidisciplinary collaborations. I mentioned this requires financial models, business models. It requires sensors, controls, optimization algorithms. So this is, and then also the HVAC aspects, building the greenhouse, and of course, at its root, it's horticulture and agriculture. And we're looking to forge cooperative relationships with networks of academics, embedded community organizations, regulators, and the CEA industry. There's an urgency to develop local dispatchable and appropriate generation. We see this as a great opportunity to extend the district energy concept, actively managing across property lines, different kinds of energy and energy resources. Here in New York, we're developing what we call UTENs, Utility Thermal Energy Networks. This is a concept that's been widely developed in parts of Europe. In Denmark, for example, I believe 70% of the thermal energy is supplied through district systems, very much unlike the United States, where everybody has their own little heating, ventilating, air conditioning system. We have our furnaces and our boilers in every little home and every commercial building, but there, 70% of the homes, businesses, and industries are on networks, and district networks facilitate sharing among companies where one, or businesses or homes, where one's waste can be the other's utilization. So, and this has to be done quickly. As our New York ISO says, the scale of what we need to do in terms of building new resources is unprecedented. This work is important, it's impactful, it's widely applicable, and it's actionable. So we'd love to urge your consideration of this, whether you're doing this in local community levels, if you're doing this in more remote areas, or if you're doing this in urban areas. There's a lot of work to be done. This operates again at water, climate, resiliency, land use, because this really reduces the footprint of food production. And there's so much different kinds of work that needs to be done here. Resource characterization, identifying feedstocks, the biomass feedstocks, GIS, identifying high value sites. What are the policy roadmaps and the policy drivers? This won't be done absent the right kinds of policies. And regions are facing local grid challenges that we feel would really benefit from valuing CEA and CHP resources, like in the way that Ontario is doing. Ontario will give payments, which will encourage this to happen, and it will happen. So we really encourage industry participants and agencies and authorities who oversee food waste, water waste, urban waste, and the operation of the grid, and academics to do pilots to try to advance this. I want to finally, before concluding, note that very recently, the U.S. Department of Energy launched through their Industrial Efficiency and Decarbonization Office, IEEE, they recently launched a CEA accelerator, which is going to help develop new models for low emissions agriculture, American agriculture opportunities, including, and with a focus, by the way, on local communities, on urban food production, and on the access to high quality, locally grown food. So with that, I invite you to please share your thoughts, your advice and guidance, and I'm available now or at any time for questions or just to share knowledge and experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was really insightful and so informative. It's amazing the amount of efforts that people are putting into improving efficiency through the CHP technologies that Tom just discussed with us.
Well,
wow. Tom, yeah.
I was just going to say, I threw a lot at you all. If there's one takeaway I can leave you all with, it's just put this into your set of thinking. I'm basically here to socialize an idea. I'd like people to think more about this. How can we think about conjoining, putting together the need for food resiliency and the imperative to grow food more productively with less environmental impact, put that together with local on-site distributed power. Let's think, not think in stovepipes or, think in very narrow ways. Let's think more broadly. So that's my message above all others. So smart people like you all listening, please put your heads to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's a question here, Tom, there's a question here that says, is it just any greenhouse, or is there a specific greenhouse that does the tomato yield? I think this person asked this question when we were talking about the tomato business. So
that data came from the trade association for the Dutch growers, Dutch Greenhouse Delta. And what they had done there is they had surveyed their membership, and they had looked at, what empirical data, what was the amount of tomato production per hectare within the greenhouse, the high-tech greenhouse. And then they compared that to local, open air farming. And greenhouses can be of any type. They can be very simple and they can be for very different purposes. But the type of greenhouses that we were talking about here are ones that are pretty sophisticated, and also often quite large. Some of those greenhouses I showed you are 10 acres, 20 acres or more. And when I talked to the Ontario Greenhouse Association, they say that our greenhouses are kind of like in three buckets. They said about a quarter, 25% of our greenhouses are less than 20 acres. About 50% of our greenhouses are 20 to 50 acres. And then about a quarter or more than 50. So the typical operation at scale is, fairly large. We're talking 20 acres. But then there's also vertical farms, indoor vertical farms, which are of course much, they're placed in dense urban areas. So I don't know if that helps, but that particular measurement was made by taking data from the membership of the Dutch Association of Greenhouses and comparing it with known data from open field farming in the Netherlands. A similar number was gotten for the cucumbers. I mentioned the cucumbers in Ontario, and there it was 8 times. 8 times more cucumbers are grown in that particular greenhouse in Leamington, Ontario, than can be grown in open field. And if you think about it, you're in a greenhouse, you get 3 plantings a year, you grow all year. You're growing open farm and you're in a cold climate, you don't grow all year. So you can get a lot more output.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Someone from the audience is requesting for slides from Tom and Joan. So the audience will be happy to receive your slides.
Absolutely. I will just happy to distribute it to everyone and hope you please come back with comments and suggestions and corrections.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll send them to you Oluleke, and you can send it out? Is that how it would work?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So people, we're approaching the end of this meeting, and we would just like to show appreciation to all our speakers. We have some certificates of appreciation for them, for Dr. Srikanth, for Michael Luger, for Joan, Kerr, and for our very own Dr. Tom Bourgeois. So we appreciate you for your time. And once again, want to remind you that this webinar was organized by the IEEE Smart Village. We encourage you to continue to follow us and to also try to join us as either a volunteer or even an entrepreneur. Our email is shown, our website is shown for you to get more information. So at this juncture, we once again appreciate all our speakers, our keynote speaker and all the other speakers for your time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experience with everyone. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send the questions to the emails. Somebody's still asking that. Thank you to all the panelists. Okay, yeah. Okay, this is just an appreciation still. All right, not a question, still appreciation. All right, so that brings us to the end of today's discussion. We appreciate everyone. Once again, thank you very much. And our next webinar would be in February, World Women's Day. So please pay attention to that. We're going to announce that. It's going to be in February 2014. And also we have IEEE Smart Village is going to be featuring next month at the Power Africa Conference. Right now, I know Rajan just concluded a conference in China, IEEE Smart Village Conference in China. So next month, where Rajan is likely going to be in Africa for the Power Africa Conference. And then in February, we have our webinar, our next webinar. So let's come together and do all this together. Thank you once again, and have a beautiful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.